Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Terry Tucker about his book, Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. Terry Tucker, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, John. I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to meet with you. We're going to have a really fun conversation. We're going to explore a lot of different topics related to leadership today, but specifically, I wanted to frame this around your recent book, Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. I love the title, and I think there's just a lot we can pull from that. So that's going to be kind of the framing and scope of our conversation today. As we get started, I wanted to share Terry's bio with everybody. Terry Tucker has been an NCAA Division I college basketball player, Citadel cadet, marketing executive, a hospital administrator, an undercover narcotics investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a high school basketball coach, a business owner, a motivational speaker, an author, and most recently, a cancer survivor. He is the author of Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Live Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. He and his wife have lived all over the United States and currently reside in Colorado with their daughter and Wheaton Terrier, Maggie. In 2019, Terry started the website Motivational Check to help others find and lead their uncommon and extraordinary lives. I love it. Wonderful background. I live in Utah. Colorado is also beautiful. We share a lot of the same natural features. So that's wonderful. I'm also a dog person, so I can relate there as well. Anything else you want to share with listeners by way of your background before we really dive on in?
No, it's funny. I listened to you sort of recite my resume, and I figure, one of these days I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I've had so many different backgrounds and different jobs and things like that, that a lot of it, maybe we'll get into, maybe we won't. A lot of it was really kind of things that my dad wanted me to do as opposed to things that I wanted to do. And, I kind of had a choice out of college. He was sick. He was dying of cancer. I had a choice whether to go into business. I obviously chose that if you look at my first two jobs, but my passion had always been law enforcement. My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. So was in Chicago during Prohibition, during, the gangs shooting it up and everything. So we can get into that maybe if it comes up. If not, let's just dive in.
Yeah, well, actually, that really is kind of the first question I have. I think we all live meandering lives. Most of us don't have a strictly linear path in terms of life, in terms of career. And a lot of us end up doing a lot of different things. And so I don't think that's strange, but you do have an interesting collection of different types of things, which is interesting. And really, I guess it comes down to determining, what is most important to us? What's our purpose, right? And I also think it's not at all uncommon for young people to largely choose early career options and schooling based on their parents, based on societal expectations and those sorts of things. I think that happens all the time. And I think it's one of the reasons why we end up having a lot of people with midlife crises, because they spend 10, 20 years in a career they hate because they were trying to please somebody. And then they realize they actually hate it and they want to do something different. So kudos to you for figuring that out and pivoting. And anything else you want to say about that in terms of kind of discovering your own purpose and really what resonated most with you?
No, I think that is important, to follow your path, your purpose, your career, your why, whatever it ends up being for you. And again, maybe I should back up. We'll probably talk a lot about purpose And we sort of equate that to our job. It doesn't have to be your job. I mean, in a lot of cases it is, but you could have a job over here to pay the bills, but your purpose is to write or to paint or to volunteer or whatever that ends up being, whatever you feel in your heart. And I always tell, especially you mentioned young people, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you should do, but it scares you, I'm going to tell you to do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful. So all these different careers, ultimately you've settled in to, do some really cool stuff around motivation and leadership, and your book, of course. One of the aspects, though, that you've had to deal with is your 9-year battle with cancer. And this is happening amidst, all the other things in your life, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about what things were like during that time, and perhaps some of the life lessons you learned as you're going through that horrific battle?
Yeah, there's an old quote by Winston Churchill, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, who said, if you're going through hell, keep going. I kind of feel like my 9-year battle with cancer has sort of been this battle with, going through hell. I was a high school girls basketball coach in Texas when I had a callus break open on the bottom of my foot back in 2012. And being a coach, you're on your feet a lot, so I didn't think a lot of it. But after a couple of weeks when it didn't heal, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an x-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there and I can cut it out." And he did. And he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it, no dark spots, no blood, nothing that would give anybody concern. But he sent it off to pathology. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from him. And as I said, he was a friend. So the more difficulty he was having explaining what was going on, obviously more frightened I became, until he just kind of laid it out. He said, "Terry, been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen this form of cancer. You have a rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of your feet or the palms of your hands. And I recommend you go to MD Anderson, which is probably, if not the best cancer hospital, certainly one of the best in the world, and be treated there because of the uniqueness of your cancer." So I did. And I had the bottom of my foot cut out. I had all the lymph nodes in my groin removed. And when I healed, I was put on a weekly injection of a drug called interferon. And what interferon did was give me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. I know you're shaking your head, and I did too with my oncologist. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that's just horrible. Not, yeah, it's cruel. Yeah, nobody should have to do that. She's like, do the best you can. And so eventually, that was 2017 when I had to stop the drug. It became so toxic that I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever of 108 degrees. That was 2017. The disease came back when the drug was stopped. 2018, had my left foot amputated. 2019, it just creeped up my leg into my shin, had 2 more surgeries. And then in 2020, I had an undiagnosed tumor in my ankle that grew large enough that it shattered my tibia, my shin bone. And my only recourse right in the middle of the pandemic was to have my left leg amputated. And I also found out that I had tumors in my lungs, and I'm being treated for those right now. So on that uplifting story, what's your next question?
Yeah, well, I'm so sorry. And so your ongoing battle continues. What are some of the things that you've learned through this time? I mean, I can only imagine. It just sounds so horrible. Yet you're sitting here, you're super positive and smiling, and you're speaking out with groups about how to find meaning and purpose in life and living your best life. How did you get there from all these trials?
Yeah, we're all going to experience pain in our lives. And it doesn't have to be, cancer pain, terminal illness, chronic, whatever. It doesn't have to be an illness related. It could be as simple as, you flunk a test at school, you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you don't get the promotion at work that you think you deserve. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, that's optional. That's what you do with that pain. Do you take it and use it to make you stronger, to make you tougher, or and to make you more determined? Or do you wallow in it and want people to feel sorry for you and feel sorry for yourself? I guess I should sort of preface this with, I'm a human being. There's no S on my chest. I don't wear a cape or anything like that. I have bad days. You know, there are days that I cry. There are days that I get down. There are days that I feel sorry for myself. I just don't let myself stay there. And, you know, one thing I learned during all those weeks of interferon and always having the flu, and believe me, there were days I prayed to die. I literally prayed to God, just please take me right now. I'm so sick of being sick. And I just realized we have to win the day. And sometimes winning the day is winning just this 5 minutes. I just got to get out of bed and I got to get to the sofa. Or, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit of energy today. Maybe I can help my wife by putting a load of laundry in the wash machine or something like that. You know, we tend to look at things sort of, you know, in the big picture. But what if you broke that down? What if you need to improve in something? You know, instead of saying, okay, I've got to get better at this, what if you said this? I'm going to get 1% better at that every single day. At the end of 30 days, you're 30% better than when you started. And that problem, that issue isn't so large anymore because you're breaking it down, for lack of a better word, you know, to bite-sized chunks, something that you can handle easily. So that was one thing I learned. The other thing I learned is that the obstacles that we face in life so many times are the obstacles that we put in front of ourselves. There was a professor back at Johns Hopkins in the 1950s who did an experiment with rats. And what he did is he took rats and he put them in a tank of water that was over their head. And he wanted to see how long they could tread water. And most of the rats treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just as they were getting ready to go under and drown, he grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, let them rest for a while, and then he put them back in that same tank of water. And the second time around, the majority of the rats treaded water for 60 hours. Think about that. First time, 15 minutes. Second time, 60 hours. What that said to me was two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. And number two, what our physical bodies are capable of doing. You know, all these limits that are out there, we put on ourselves. Your body can do so much more. The Navy SEALs, probably the toughest group of warriors, or certainly men in the world, they have a 40% rule. And it's similar to that test. It basically says, if you can't run another step or do another push-up or swim another lap, you're at 40% of your maximum. And you have 60% left to give to yourself. So whenever you think, you know, I can't do that, or that's too hard, or whatever, remember, you have so much more to give to yourself. Don't sell yourself short. Get out there and make that happen.
Yeah, well, I love that. And a couple of personal thoughts and experiences came to mind, though I don't want to try to equate these with like battling cancer because they're silly in comparison. But I think of, you know, as you're describing, just incremental progress. I used to road bike a lot, and I don't so much anymore. It took a lot of time, and I have other priorities. But you know, I'd go on these long bike rides, 200+ mile bike rides. You get to the point where you're just so worn down. I've never run a marathon, but I imagine it's similar, you know, to the feeling of running a marathon. You get to the point where you're just so worn down and your body's screaming at you, and you just think, I have no choice. I just have to stop. And when you get to that point, all you can do is like go to the next hill, right? Or you choose a landmark and you say, I can get there. I'm not sure I can go any farther, but I'm just going to get there. And you get there, and then you're like, okay, I can get to this next spot. And at least for me, that's how I did it, right? To persevere and push through. So that's one thing I'm thinking of. And I think we all have those types of things in our lives that we either choose to kind of give up on, or we choose to just persevere. And again, road biking, that's a silly thing. It's nowhere comparable to terminal disease or other hardships that people have to deal with in their life all the time. And I want to acknowledge that. Another one that's even more silly is my whole life, I've wanted to play the drums. And just a couple weeks ago, I decided, you know what? It was just kind of on a whim. I saw this ad for an electric drum set. I'm like, I'm going to get an electric drum set. And so, you know, I get it. I set it up and I like start playing. I have like no rhythm. I have no drumming talent. Like I am somewhat musical, but I've never drummed. I just always wanted to. And so I sit down, I start doing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm horrible. And this is hard. I'm like, now what? Now what? I have this drum set. Now what do I do? Because I'm a fool. Like I'm a complete idiot on the drums. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. I'm going to just like master a couple simple beats and, you know, those sorts of things. And it's been, you know, 2-3 weeks. And I kind of adopted the same mentality that you said, you know, 1% better. If I can just like master one thing in my daily practice and get just a little bit better at it, then, you know, over time that starts to accumulate. And now just a couple weeks in, like I can actually play along the songs. I'm like still not good, but I can actually do simple things and I can play along the songs, and it's actually already feeling really satisfying, you know. And I know over time I'll get better and better and better. And so, you know, if we can just, like you said, particularly when things are really hard, if we can just pull them apart into their little pieces and do just a little bit at a time, especially when we feel overwhelmed by the task at hand, then that's going to be our best bet in moving forward. And we're talking about personal life types of things right now, but it certainly applies in the workplace as well. Because how often do we find ourselves in a new role, in a new position, and we feel completely in over our heads, we're overwhelmed. Most jobs have a pretty steep learning curve when you're new at them. And it can be very easy to feel discouraged. It can feel very easy to feel stupid, to feel imposter syndrome, all of those sorts of things that ultimately can influence us, you know, have negative self-talk, and ultimately can bog us down, especially if we ruminate in all the difficulties that we're facing. And, you know, most employers don't expect you to come in to a new job, a new role, and to be able to just like hit the ground running, ready to fire on all cylinders from day one. Like they recognize, yes, there's going to be training. Yes, there's going to be a learning curve. Yes, they just want to know that you're putting in the effort and that you're making steady progress. But that can be really hard for the person when they're in that moment, just feeling so incompetent in this new role, in this new position. And so we just have to take baby steps and make incremental progress. And as we do that, you know, you get a month into a new job, 6 months into a new job, you're an entirely different person in that role, because you've now learned and grown and developed, and you have way more capabilities than what you previously did.
Yeah, I listening to your talk, I reminded of a story when I was at Wendy's. So I started out in field marketing. I was a trainee, and basically meant I did copying and gassed up everybody's car. I mean, that was kind of what I did, you know, with my college degree. And eventually I moved to new product marketing. And I remember there was a product we were looking at. It was a beef nugget. It was very similar to a chicken nugget.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
It looked horrible, and the focus group research on it was tastes great, looks terrible. But there was one of the directors was like, you know what? I really think we should put this in a market, a group of stores somewhere, say Indianapolis, whatever, and test it, because I really have a good feeling about it. And all the data, all the research said no. And you got to understand, when we did that, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars, because it's putting equipment in, it's getting suppliers, it's training, it's putting stuff on menu boards, it's keying stuff on the register. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this guy just kept pushing. We should try it. We should try it. We should try it. And so the vice president finally relented, said, fine, we'll try it. We'll put it in Indianapolis. And it failed miserably. Great taste, looked terrible. And we were all, we get into debriefing meeting at the end, and we're the rest of us are kind of like, man, this guy's going to have his hat handed to him, because he did this. And the VP came in and he said, you know what? John over here suggested this, and we know it failed. He said, but you know what? I want all of you to have the attitude of John. If you believe in something, I want you to stand up and say, you know what? I believe in this. I know all the research says we shouldn't do it, but I want you to if your heart tells you to do it, I want you to be confident enough and feel good enough about this group that will support you in it. We may not do it, but I want you to be able to do that. And we were all, I was a kid at the time, I just graduated from college, and I was like, wow, that's the first time I ever seen somebody take what was in their heart and say, you know what, I want to go with it. And also have somebody say, hey, yeah, you totally screwed this up, but you know what? I admire you for having the gumption to bring this forward and say, I believe in it and I want to give it a try. And those were two lessons that I learned right there at that meeting that have stayed with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting. And that is the mark of a confident, secure leader, that they're willing to create an atmosphere where people can try things that ultimately will fail. Think if that leader had taken it a different direction, the direction everyone thought, what would that have meant for the next time you're trying to innovate or do something, that challenges the status quo? People are going to be protective, right? They're going to be self-protective. They're going to not try to disrupt the status quo because they see this other person that, was made an example of for trying something that didn't work. And that's going to be the end of innovation in that team. So kudos to that leader. And that's, what we should all aspire to. Does that mean we try to purposefully fail? No. Should we make evidence-based decisions as best we can? Yes. But, there's more types of evidence than just, what a focus group said. So, good for them for pursuing that. And it's also a really great lesson. So Terry, I'm thinking, we've already started to tackle some of these principles that I imagine you're discussing in your book, but can you walk us through, you subtitle the book 10 principles, right, of living this extraordinary life. What, maybe not all of them, we probably don't have time to go through all of them, but, what are some of those most important principles that you want to share with listeners today about what we can do in our personal lives, in our organizational and career life, in trying to lead that extraordinary life, lead extraordinary teams, and help our organizations to thrive?
Yeah, and the answer to that question is it's going to depend on you. And I love, as an author, each chapter is a principle. And when somebody reads the book, there's always one principle that sort of jumps out. This is the one that resonates with me. And I love that, and the principles are not in any order. 2 is not any more important than 7 or anything like that. But one of the ones that resonates with me, and it resonates with me because I've done it probably a lot over my life, is this one. Most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. How many times have you wanted to do something and you're like, ooh, wait a minute, I don't know. If I do that and I fail, what is that person going to think about me? Or what are these people going to say about me? Kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the beef nugget and that whole situation, where somebody actually stood up and said, you know what? Yeah, I'm kind of scared. Yeah, the data says we probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to push this forward. I'm going to see what we can do with this. So that's the one that resonates with me. There actually, I devoted a whole chapter to failure and failing often, especially when you're young. I mean, our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo is good. Don't mess with it. It's good here. Just stay where we are. But the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to grow, is to step outside those comfort zones. And when you do that, all kinds of things come into play. Fear, anxiety, stress, hey, I may be embarrassed, if I do this and things like that. But you got to take that chance. You, especially when you're young. I mean, like you said before, when you go into a job and, I was a trainee, I could pretty much do no wrong because I didn't know what I was doing. Here I am with this business administration degree, and I think I know everything about business. I didn't know a thing about business. I had to learn by sitting back and shutting up and watching and seeing how people, that was successful. That wasn't why, and kind of being intellectual about that. So that's another one about failure. The importance of listening. One of the jobs that I had was a hostage negotiator on a SWAT team. And, as a policeman, most of what we dealt with was people face to face, almost 99% of the time. And you could take visual clues. If you're talking to somebody and they're kind of looking around, maybe they're going to run, or if they're balling up their fists, maybe they want to fight you. And, you can do things. You can mitigate that. You can sit them down. You can handcuff them. You can put them in a car, whatever is appropriate for why you're there. But as negotiators, we didn't have those visual clues. That person wasn't with us. So we had to figure out what was going on based on what people were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. And the importance of listening, not to respond, but to understand. And I think we miss that boat a lot. It's like, hurry up, John, say what you're going to say because I want to get my 2 cents in. No, wait a minute. John, what did you say? Okay, let me understand why you said that. Where are you coming from in life? And today we, whether it's on the job or whether it's in your personal life, we're screaming at each other, and you're always right. Well, guess what? You're not. You're not always right. You have to be open to what other people want to do. So that's listening was another one. Another one that I really like is you are the person you're looking to become. So even if you're not that person right now, you still are that person. You just haven't gotten there yet. So don't stop. If that's something you want to do, even though you're not there yet, don't just sit back and John, you and I probably know people. It's like, I'm good. Not gonna push myself. Not gonna get out there. Not gonna put myself out. Kind of scary. I like the way I am. Don't do that. Whoever you want to be that person. Act like that person, and eventually you'll get to that point.
I love that. I think those are really great points, and it does. You did a good job of highlighting some of the key principles that you address in your book. Of course, many more that we don't have time to get into today. But Terry, it has just been a real pleasure talking with you. The time has flown by. I need to let you get on with your busy day. But before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, find out more about your book, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. So I can be gotten to through my website, Motivational Check. So motivationalcheck.com. I put up a daily thought for the day. I put up the Monday morning motivational message on Mondays. You can get Sustainable Excellence anywhere you can get a book online. You can get it through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, wherever you can get a book online. And I'll end with this story. I always been a big fan of Westerns growing up. And my mom and dad used to let me stay up and watch Gunsmoke and Wild Wild West and things like that. 1993, the movie Tombstone comes out, and it stars Val Kilmer as the guy by the name of Doc Holliday, and Kurt Russell is a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were two living, breathing human beings that walked on the face of the earth. They are not made up characters for this movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much he was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt was a lawman. So these two guys from entirely divergent backgrounds formed this very close friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc is dying at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which literally is about 3 hours from my house. The real Doc Holliday died there, and he's buried in the Glenwood Springs Cemetery. And they're talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, I was in love with my cousin when I was young. She's all that I ever wanted, but she joined a convent over the affair. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? Wyatt says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life, and get on with living yours. John, you and I know people who are kind of sitting back and saying, when this happens, I'll have a normal life. When that happens, I'll have a successful life. When this happens, I'll have an influential life. Don't wait for life to come to you. Get out there, find the purpose that you were put on this earth for, live that purpose, because I promise you, at the end of your life, you'll have a whole lot less stress and you'll be a whole lot happier. And I'll end it at that.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Terry. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Terry and his team can do for you. Check out his book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life.
Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.